our first guest speaker is Budi Sudarto. So Budi is the founder and director of Ananda Training and Consultancy, which is a boutique agency specializing in intersectionality, equity, and justice. Budi has an extensive knowledge in intersectionality, gender, and race relations, and continue to use their own lived-in experiences to advocate for meaningful and sustainable change based on human rights. Budi is a contributing author to a book named Living and Loving in Diversity, as well as several journal articles on intersectionality. So welcome, Budi, and thanks for being our guest.
I'm going to go straight into the topic of intersectionality because we only have a short time to discuss this very complex but necessary concept. So you might have heard the term intersectionality, you might have seen it in government documents, and you might have it written down in your own organization. But what is intersectionality? I want to take you back to the civil rights movement in the United States, where a group of African-American and Black feminist women are actually finding themselves in a very unique situation where they are experiencing racism because of their skin color. At the same time, when they were involved in the racial civil rights movement, they're also experiencing sexism from African-American and Black men, as well as from white men. And these experiences of sexism and racism, they all collide and they intersect. Hence, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw came up with this term intersectionality in her article in 1989 to explore these intersections between racism and sexism that has real consequences on the lives and the opportunities that are given or taken away to African-American and Black women in the United States. So intersectionality comes from the social legal movement, and it comes from a civil rights movement. So it is an active word. It is a word that demands us to constantly looking, inspecting, and really interrogating the persistence of inequity and injustice that people with intersecting identities are experiencing in their daily lives. So that's a little bit of a nutshell about the origin of intersectionality. So now you know it is not a neutral term, it's actually an active term. And I like to show this quote from Kimberly Crenshaw. So it is a lens. Our experiences cannot be narrowed down to just simply based on racism or sexism, queerphobia, homophobia, transphobia, or any other forms of discrimination that we are facing. Our lives intersect, and the way I live my life is the intersection between racism, gender-based violence, homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, and a lot more. And that has real consequences on the way I see myself as part of the Australian society, as well as the way I understand myself in this broader world. This is where the concept of intersectionality can get a little bit too much for some people. So I'd like to show them this diagram. Imagine the person that is in the middle of the diagram is one of your service user or one of your client, one of your consumer. And you can see there's a lot of intersecting identities there that actually have an influence on the way they understand themselves and also the way they engage with the service. So some of these identities based on race, ethnicity, gender, class, language, religion, ability or disability, sexuality, mental health, age, education, body size, and a lot more. Intersectional lens actually recognize that the experiences of being privileged and the experience of being marginalized is quite contextual. And I'm going to give you a personal example. So in Australia, I have been marginalized because of my skin color and ethnicity. I am Asian, I'm Indonesian, I am brown skin, and living in a predominantly white society, the simple fact that I have a brown skin already put me in a marginalized group. However, back in Indonesia, I'm actually quite privileged because I belong to the ethnic majority. I'm a Muslim, so I belong to the dominant religious group in Indonesia. When it comes to my sexuality, I am marginalized in both Australia and Indonesia. So you can see how the experiences of being both privileged and marginalized are quite contextual, depending on where we are and the situation that we find ourselves in. We carry the stories with us in everywhere we go. We carry the stories of being privileged and marginalized in all settings and all contexts. The impact of experiencing intersecting marginalization, we call that a compounding impact. It's all compounds. It all comes together. And sometimes it can be very difficult to separate which part of my identity that has been marginalized. Again, I'm going to tell you a personal story. I went to a Halloween party on Friday night, and I walked down to a popular strip here in Melbourne, Chapel Street, and there's a lot of young people there. I'm not young anymore, so I'm just trying to blend in with the young people. And a car drove past and started yelling something at me. And I couldn't really tell whether the abuse was based on my race, was based on my sexuality, or maybe it's all together. And that's what we meant by compounding impact. It can be very difficult to identify which part of my identity that has been marginalized. And here are some examples of my intersecting marginalization. The first layer is based on gender. I was born a male, but I am not masculine. I do not conform with the idea of masculinity. So the first instances of discrimination is based around my gender expression and how I identify. So gender-based violence is the first layer of experience of discrimination that I can remember of. Then that intersect when I hit puberty, and then I started realizing about sexuality and realizing that I am gay, and that gender-based violence intersect with homophobia and heterosexism. Again, I didn't have to think about my race in Indonesia. I moved to Australia, and suddenly I was faced with race and racism. So that intersect add another layer to my experience. I'm a Muslim. After September 11, Muslim was very, very tough. And I still remember being called names, being called a terrorist from strangers that I didn't even know. And that experience of Islamophobia intersect with all the other forms of discrimination that I experienced that far. And now, with migration and citizenship, the rise of ultranationalism that actually also intersect with gender, the anti-trans movement. I am non-binary, so that actually has an impact on my identity. These are just some of the examples about how intersectionality works for a real person, such as myself. And the one that I highlighted are some of the things that people have said to me. And I would like to draw your attention to the last sentence. We are already diverse. We don't need to do this work. This came from a service provider who are ethno-specific. And when I talk about intersectionality, their comment was exactly that. Our clients are diverse. Our staff is diverse. What else do you want from us? The unwillingness to unpack the persistence of inequity and injustice, even within an already diverse group. As I said before, experiencing intersecting marginalization can have compounding impact. And these are some of the examples of my experience. Being hyper alert of stigma and discrimination, constantly having to self-advocate without seeing meaningful change, feeling less than and feeling that I have to prove my worth more so than my white colleagues, not taken seriously in professional settings, expecting to do the work for a lot less, and also being seen as problematic for constantly challenging systemic inequity and injustice. These are just some of them. There's a lot more, but we don't have time because this is not all about me. So where does intersectionality sit with the concept of diversity? Let's have a think about it for 1 second. Diversity is a concept that has been developed by people who hold power to make allowances for people who do not share the same attributes to them. Diversity is about expecting people to conform to the existing power structure and culture, and it doesn't work for people like myself. What we want is for organizations to be intersectional, because intersectionality actually challenges inequity and injustice. It demands us to create a system that recognizes our multiple intersecting identities. And you might start to feel uncomfortable at this point because we have been taught that diversity is the way to go. And I'm not saying that diversity is not the way to go. I'm just saying that there's a lot more that can be done beyond diversity. So let's have a look at this diagram. Let's have a look at people who sit close to the center of power. These are the people that came up with the concept of diversity because they realized we actually have to make allowances for gay men, for women, for people with some disability, for people with some neurodivergence, and more. However, the center of power remains the same. When you look at this diagram, you probably start identifying where you sit within power. And we call that positionality. Understanding our power and privilege is not about making ourselves feel guilty or feel bad for being positioned close to power or away from power. It is a useful tool for us to be reflexive and to really understand that even within our marginalization, we carry some privileges. And within our privileges, we are also experiencing some level of marginalization. I like using this diagram because it really shows that privilege and marginalization coexist. And our job is to make sure that we do whatever we can do to equalize the playing field. So let's have a think about the LGBTQIA plus community in which I am a member of. When we look at the wheel of power and privilege, we can see that the one that sits close to power, heterosexual, has been replaced by gay men. However, the rest of the characteristics remain the same. People who hold power in the community that I am part of are still mostly neurotypical, with good mental health, coming from middle to upper class background, able to speak English, citizen of Australia, white, and have post-secondary education. So again, this is a good tool to reflect and to think about who are the communities that we have been left out. Who have we been positioned outside or away from power? And how can we equalize the playing field? How can we share power to start dismantling the persistence of inequity and injustice? And this is a nice diagram as well to really show you what's happening in the world or what's happening in our society. If we just think from the equality perspectives, it actually doesn't help communities and individuals who require a lot of resources to be in the same starting point as we are. Let's have a look at that diagram. The short-statured person only been given one box, the medium-statured person given one box, the already tall person given one box. And what we see there, even with the concept of equality, not everyone is equal. So what we are moving towards is the concept of equity and justice. Equity is to ensure that we give the resources that people need so they can have the same starting point as we do. Even better when we move to justice, because justice is about removing systemic barriers that can actually prevent individuals and communities from fully participating in society. And I like this quote from Davina Lazarus Stewart, who were reflecting on the education system in the United States. And I am mindful of time, so I'm just going to read the concept of justice. Let's ask ourselves this question. Whose idea that we haven't been taken seriously because they are not part of the majority, and whose safety is being sacrificed and minimized to allow others to feel comfortable and maintain dehumanizing views? These are the questions that we need to reflect on if we are to truly commit to the concept of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. So how does this all work in the aging sector? So I'll skip a few slides, and I just want to look at the diversity framework that I am very sure you are more familiar with this document than I am. So I copy and paste this from the government document, the diversity framework, the aim, but it's not enough. We can actually do a lot more by implementing an intersectional lens. And I'll show you ways that we can do that. So one of the key target population, government language, is people from ethnic minority communities, or CALD. I don't like saying that word, CALD, so I just say people from ethnic minority communities. And let's start thinking about incorporating intersectionality. And let's think about incorporating LGBTIQA+, who are also members of the ethnic communities. Have we considered the needs of LGBTIQA+ who intersect with ethnicity and faith? What have we done to ensure they feel safe when accessing our services? Have we provided enough training to our staff so we don't become the source of discrimination? Have we listened to their needs? Have we invited them in? Are we willing to challenge our system? Are we willing to be uncomfortable? And also, have we listened to intersections that exist within multicultural, multi-faith, LGBTQIA+ communities? And these include people with disability, neurodivergent, experiencing chronic illness, no support from their family of choice and family of origin, and a lot more. And how about the partners, the carers, family members, and supporters? Have we provided safe space for them? And this is actually where I sit at the moment. So I am a family member of someone who is in residential care, and that aged care provider is not a safe place for me. So we have to think about that beyond our clients. Why is thinking about intersectionality? Because it can actually benefit the sector to be better, to move beyond diversity, to start looking into vulnerable population within an already marginalized communities. And we need to start thinking about the system. How can us as providers, also making sure that our contractors are able to provide safety, maintain the dignity and agency of the service users, families, carers, and people who support them. Our communities are intersectional. You are here today joining us. You already carry that intersectionality. Now it's a matter about transferring that concept into practical ideas and really making sure that anyone who accessing your service can feel safe all the time without fear of being discriminated and marginalized because of their intersecting identities.
So our second guest speaker is Lukasz Krzyzowski. Dr. Krzyzowski is a dedicated professional working at the University of Western Australia and Umbrella Multicultural Community Care. Dr. Krzyzowski work focuses on improving the social support networks and physical well-being of all the individuals particularly those from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, the LGBTQI plus community and regional areas.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So today I would like to present a few insights from a pilot project called Rainbow Migrants Service Co-Design, Trial, and Evaluation. So first of all, LGBTIQ plus people are on the move. We know that more LGBTIQ people arrive in Australia than leave. Many of them are from countries where homosexuality is still criminalized. However, not all of these people arrived here because of harmful law or prejudice. There are other motivations like employment, family reunion, partnerships that motivate these people to relocate. And in the Rainbow Migrants Project, what we are trying to advocate for is an approach, life course approach, saying that you might be here because of better employment, career opportunity, not necessarily because of harmful law. However, your situation here without or with limited access to social support might lead to a situation that in the future when someone's physical or psychological capacity decreases, they might have limited access to informal social support. In this project, we are, first of all, saying that this project is exploring the unique needs of LGBTIQ plus migrants, regardless of their age, but also regardless of their visa status. And while there is some work done around LGBTIQ plus refugees, not much is done in for people or aged care providers, clients who are not refugees. And when we look at the top 10 countries of birth with the largest increase in volume from 2011 to 2021, we can see that many of these countries are still criminalizing homosexuality, or we have countries where don't ask, don't tell, or cultural norms might still impact negatively queer people. So there is increased number of migrants from countries with harmful law, or where LGBTIQ plus people still can't or don't have equal rights. And it was really good to hear Budi's presentation and his stories around being a person with intersecting identities. That's what's actually missing currently in our discussion about inclusive and safe aged care, is that these stories are not often heard, and why there is a strong push towards person-centered care and designing and providing care that's responsive and tailored to a specific needs. It's still a situation in which the focus is put on certain characteristics, let's say, so that there will be some effort made towards creating systemic change, which would recognize the unique needs of LGBTIQ plus people. However, experiences of those who are from, especially from non-English speaking countries with multicultural, multi-faith background, these experiences are not incorporated into these changes. We know that being multicultural, being a queer person and multicultural background is connected with higher chances of feeling unaccepted, especially by family members, with higher psychological distress, and with other mental health issues that are already very high in LGBTIQ plus community, and even higher when we look at minority within the minority. And these experiences are not linked to any specific age. These experiences and challenges when it comes to mental health, social support, physical health are often occur more frequently in the Rainbow Migrants community. I think that's important to understand LGBTIQ plus older migrants is that older Rainbow migrants rely on other Rainbow migrants from non-English speaking countries who are the main source of support. And what's interesting is that with age, this homogeneity increases. So while LGBTIQ plus people are Anglo-Celtic still can rely on friends or family members who often are accepting their sexual orientation or gender identity. In case of Rainbow migrants, this number is much lower. So family members more often reject their queer family members. And they might also, or those who live, or those who don't reject, they might live overseas and have limited capacity to support someone who is living in Australia and is queer. The Rainbow Migrants Project is trying to understand, it's a pilot project, so it's trying to understand these unique needs of diverse groups of Rainbow migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, international students, and so on. We've been working with many partner organizations to deliver this project and promote inclusive service provision and increase knowledge and awareness among service providers. So objectives are to co-design and pilot community intervention, to co-develop an intersectional model of service design, to raise awareness, and as a kind of final objective is to create a Rainbow Migrants community of practice. And we do it through numerous activities involving people of different ages, abilities, to give them voice and include them in co-designing and trialing these interventions. So we've engaged 64 participants from 28 countries, and we've been initially, we aim to explore certain issues. However, it turned out that there is a very immediate need to respond to these needs. We decided to change the scope of this project and provide certain services due to referrals from Red Cross, Mercy Care, Pride WA, and other organizations who did not have capacity to work with LGBTIQ plus migrants, especially those who recently arrived. Among those participants, as I mentioned, we have 3 participants living in residential aged care and 2 living in home care. We also engage 41 service providers, community organizations in training workshops, information sessions. So in general, what we know from this project is that, and from literature and other initiatives, that there is this issue with multiple and overlapping forms of discrimination, exclusion from sources of social support. I personally would access my social support, but not necessarily in Polish community, but in LGBTIQ plus community. However, other people might not have any opportunity to access support from any sources that normally they would do. Big issue of intimate partner violence, especially people who are on partner visa, housing, homelessness, and health and well-being over the life course, as I mentioned, it's actually is a trend where we can see that rainbow migrants are at risk of worse mental and health and physical health across their life. And because Budi mentioned and described intersectionality, I feel I can skip this part and focus on a case study. So Giovanni immigrated to Australia from Italy in 2005 after his mother passed away. Following her death, Giovanni made the decision to join his family, including his brother, sister, and their respective families. He settled in a close-knit Italian immigrant community in Perth. Fearing potential rejection and discrimination, Giovanni chose to keep his sexual orientation a secret, not revealing it to anyone, including his family and friends. In his late 50s, when he arrived, he had limited opportunities to learn English and establish his own social support networks or family of choice. A few years later, in his late 60s, Giovanni began experiencing memory loss and cognitive decline, ultimately leading to a diagnosis of dementia. As his condition worsened, he started losing control over his actions and words, including his ability to hide his sexual orientation. During one of his dementia episodes, Giovanni inadvertently involuntarily disclosed his sexual orientation to his family and friends. They were shocked by this revelation, as it was completely unexpected and led to a breakdown in his relationships and support systems. Giovanni's family and friends distanced themselves from him. They withdrew emotional and practical support, leaving him without any assistance and socially isolated. This isolation increased Giovanni's dementia symptoms and hindered his access to necessary care and assistance. So this case shows that for many LGBTIQ+ migrants, coming out later in life is often a reality. It's often not a matter of informed choice. It might happen because, for example, of dementia. But in this case, we can see also how intersectionality plays out. It's a combination of power that cultural norms have this power to increase or decrease someone's willingness to disclose their sexual orientation. There is an identity of Giovanni, whose identity is a gay man. His relationships were straight, or he would describe his relationships with other people as relationship with other people who are straight. And there is this power relationship, which means that culture plays or may increase access to LGBTIQ+ resources or community, and also it might not access or might not support living someone's life. So the social isolation and loneliness is a big part of this picture. What we found out is that what works really well is creating community partnerships where a aged care organization collaborates with LGBTIQ organization in terms of creating volunteering opportunities and an opportunity for someone who is not open about their sexual orientation to be still involved in community activities. There is also an urgent need to increase awareness and knowledge of aged care staff about diversity. However, in another case, it was opposite when staff was trying to convince a person to come out, saying that this person is free and can express themselves, despite despite the fact that this person didn't want to disclose this their sexual orientation. It's about creating safe space to do it without forcing anyone to disclose their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Budi, you were saying in your presentation that communities who are intersectional can access services without being discriminated against or being compartmentalized. And then you were saying that may actually question the status quo. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
That's the dream, when someone come into the surface and they can just be their authentic self without being identified as belonging to one diverse group or another. So I just like to give an example. Someone that I know whose partner is in the residential care, and the way the staff there has interacted with this person is very much just based on one diverse characteristic, and that is of their ethnicity. The relationship was erased. There was nowhere in the system for the partner to be registered as the partner of this person in the residential care. There's a lot of resistance from the residential care to actually acknowledge the relationship. And the excuse that was given to a friend of mine that passed on to me was, we have to protect our clients because our culture is not LGBTQIA plus friendly. Heartbreaking to hear that. You got a vulnerable person receiving care who really wants everyone, their supporters, their partners, to be there with them. And the system basically being used as an excuse for the service not to provide safety and inclusion. So how can we talk about diversity when we are deliberately excluding people because we are not comfortable in challenging our own worldviews, also our own biases and our own prejudices? So that's what I mean about challenging status quo. We need to constantly challenge it, question it, and really put people accountable for forcing people to fit a specific diversity characteristic.
Thanks very much, Budi. Now we have another question that I want to ask you, Lukasz, and that is, you were talking about in the Rainbow Migrants Project that you were discussing recommended interventions. You mentioned co-design as well. What were some of the things that you maybe found through the project that you can recommend aged care providers to consider as, you know, as some of the interventions so they can improve their service to be more intersectional, to be more inclusive, and more embracing of diversity and equity, obviously?
Yes, I think that one of the issues that we just not discovered, but it was quite obvious, is that aged care service providers would not consult with LGBTIQ communities or organizations about specific needs. Instead, these organizations would apply, I would say, a bit tokenistic approach to this issue. And very often it would not only be that, you know, you can be whoever you want to be here. And what I found fascinating was that in few cases that would be almost like forcing someone to be gay. And this person said, but I've never been gay enough. It's not my first identity. I don't care actually if my unique needs are fulfilled or not. That's not something I want you as an aged care provider to focus on. So I think that it's really important to understand that there are, I would say, community needs and certain standard that should be applied, but the standard cannot be applied to everyone when we talk about individuals. That some people, they are happy not being open about their sexual orientation. And that's because of their life, how they lived their life, and that they never felt part of LGBTIQ plus community. And that's something which might make them more interested in being linked with their home country community or same language, but not necessarily with LGBTIQ plus community. So what I'm trying to say is that there is no, I guess, perfect solution for that, except of simply trying to understand a person who might be an organizational clients or a member. And these stories are really important. And I believe that storytelling tells us really what the person needs and who the person is. And having a questionnaire where we ask about our future, let's say, clients, whether they are gay or lesbian and so on, it's not really solving all issues. It's important, but also it can't be applied to everyone. I would rather suggest really careful exploration of someone's needs and expectations from a service provider.
Thanks very much, Lukasz.